In the early 1940s, the world was in the middle of World War II. The fight was between the Allies, which included the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union, against the Axis powers like Germany, Italy, and Japan. As the war raged on, scientists were racing to create a new kind of weapon, the atomic bomb. This wasn't just any weapon, it was one that could cause destruction on an unbelievably large scale. One of the key players in this story was President Franklin D. Roosevelt of the United States. In 1939, he got a letter from famous scientist Albert Einstein, who warned him that Germany might be working on a powerful new weapon. Concerned, Roosevelt decided the United States needed to beat them to it. This kicked off the Manhattan Project, a secret program to build an atomic bomb. Leading this project was J. Robert Oppenheimer, a physicist who worked with other top scientists to make this bomb a reality. Fast forward to 1945, the final stages of World War II. The Allies were making progress in Europe against Germany, but the fight in the Pacific against Japan was still fierce and costly. American General Douglas MacArthur and President Harry Truman, who had taken over after Roosevelt's death in April 1945, were under pressure to end the war swiftly to save lives. By July 1945, Oppenheimer and his team had made huge progress. In a desert in New Mexico, they successfully tested the world's first atomic bomb. This test, known as the Trinity test, showed that the bomb worked as planned. After seeing the bomb's power, Truman had a big decision to make. Should he use it against Japan to force them to surrender? Many people faced serious problems during this time. There were moral questions about the use of such a massive weapon. Scientists like Leo Szilard, who initially supported the bomb's development, had second thoughts because of its destructive potential. The military leaders were also worried about the massive loss of civilian lives. Despite these concerns, Truman authorized the use of the bomb. On August 6, 1945, the United States dropped the first atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima, Japan. It exploded with a force equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT, destroying the city and killing thousands of people. 3 days later, on August 9th, another bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. This decision quickly led to Japan's surrender on August 15, 1945, which ended World War II. However, the consequences were severe. Many people in the cities died instantly, while others died later from radiation exposure. This chapter in history is crucial. It changed warfare forever, showing how powerful and devastating nuclear weapons could be. It also started a nuclear arms race during the Cold War. We care about this today because it reminds us of the need for peace and diplomacy. Understanding this helps us ensure something like it never happens again. Understanding our past can help create a more peaceful future. In the early 1940s, amidst the chaos of World War II, world powers were caught in a brutal struggle. The United States and its allies, like the United Kingdom and the Soviet Union, were pushing hard against Germany and Japan. The end of the war in Europe came in May 1945, when Germany surrendered. But Japan was still fighting fiercely. The United States wanted to end the war quickly to save lives and resources. That's when the idea of the atomic bomb came into play. This was a new type of weapon with huge destructive power developed under a secret project called the Manhattan Project. Scientists like J. Robert Oppenheimer and General Leslie Groves led the charge in creating this bomb. They worked with scientists from the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada. By the summer of 1945, the atomic bomb was ready. But using it was a big decision. President Harry S. Truman, who became president after Franklin D. Roosevelt passed away, had to decide whether to use this powerful new weapon. Advisor after advisor gave him input, talking about how it might end the war quickly and save lives. Others, however, warned about the devastating impact it would have. The plan to drop the bomb took shape in a series of meetings. The city of Hiroshima, a military hub, was chosen first. It had not been heavily bombed yet, so the damage from the atomic bomb would be clear. Nagasaki, another important city, was chosen as a backup target. On August 6, 1945, a B-29 bomber named Enola Gay took off from an island in the Pacific Ocean called Tinian. It carried a bomb called Little Boy, which used uranium, a heavy metal, to release energy. The process involved splitting atoms, which releases a massive amount of energy. At 8:15 in the morning, the bomb was dropped over Hiroshima. In an instant, the city was hit with a force unlike anything seen before. Buildings were flattened, and thousands of people lost their lives immediately. The aftermath was catastrophic, with many more dying afterwards due to injuries and radiation. 3 days later, on August 9th, a second bomber called Bockscar took off, this time carrying a bomb named Fat Man. This bomb used plutonium, a different metal, to cause an explosion. The initial target was the city of Kokura, but it was covered by clouds, so the plane headed to Nagasaki. At 11:02 in the morning, the bomb exploded over Nagasaki, causing similar destruction. These bombings presented many challenges. The scientists had developed theoretical ideas into a working weapon, but they couldn't know everything that would happen once it was used. Pilots had to fly very specific paths to get the bombs to their targets safely. And many worried about what the world would think of this new kind of warfare. The results of the bombings were obvious and heartbreaking. Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945, ending World War II. But the loss was immense, and many felt the impact for years to come. The bombings showed the world a glimpse of how deadly nuclear weapons could be, sparking debates and efforts to control their spread. This story matters because it marked the start of the nuclear age. Today, the discussions around nuclear weapons and their impact continue. Understanding these events helps us think about the balance of power in the world, the choices leaders make, and the consequences those choices can have. In the early 1940s, the world was in chaos. World War II had been raging for years. Countries like Germany and Japan were fighting to expand their territories. The United States was trying to stop them. The stage was set for something big. Enter J. Robert Oppenheimer and the Manhattan Project. Oppenheimer was a scientist leading a group of some of the smartest people from the United States and other allied countries. They were in a race against time to build a new kind of weapon, the atomic bomb. Why? Because there was a fear that Germany might be doing the same. Fast forward to August 1945. The war was still going on. President Harry Truman had to make a tough call. Japan was not backing down, even though it was clear they were losing. So the United States decided to use their new superweapon. The target was Hiroshima, a city in Japan with military importance. On August 6, 1945, a United States B-29 bomber known as the Enola Gay, piloted by Colonel Paul Tibbets, was flying high over Japan. The crew was carrying something deadly, an atomic bomb nicknamed Little Boy. At 8:15 in the morning, they dropped it over Hiroshima. In about 43 seconds, it exploded above the city. So, what made Little Boy special? At its core was a very small piece of uranium, a heavy metallic element. When it exploded, it started a chain reaction that released a massive amount of energy. Imagine the power of thousands of tons of regular explosives going off at once. That energy destroyed nearly everything within a 1-mile radius. Horrible challenges followed. Hiroshima was in ruins. Buildings collapsed. Fires broke out everywhere. People who were miles away felt the blast. Many lost their lives immediately, while others faced severe injuries. Hospitals were overloaded, and there wasn't enough medical help for everyone. This led to huge global consequences. On August 9th, just 3 days later, another atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. Japan surrendered on August 15th, officially ending World War II. The bombings played a part in stopping the war, but had devastating effects on the people. This matters today because it changed war forever. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were a wake-up call for the world. It showed the enormous destruction that nuclear weapons could cause. It started debates about whether it was right to use such destructive technology. Governments began thinking seriously about arms control and nuclear disarmament. The events pushed people to work for peace and improve international relations. In a nutshell, the bombing of Hiroshima was a turning point. It raised questions about the power and responsibility that come with science and technology. And it taught us that what we do today can have huge effects on the future. Understanding this part of history helps us realize why peace and careful decision-making are so important. In 1945, the world was deep into World War II. The end seemed near, but things were still really tense. The United States had already dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima on August 6th, but Japan had not yet surrendered. This led to the decision to use another atomic bomb to speed things up and hopefully save more lives in the long run by ending the war quickly. Several key people were involved in this decision. President Harry Truman was the leader of the United States at the time. He had to make the tough choices about using nuclear weapons. There was also General Leslie Groves, who led the Manhattan Project, which was the top-secret program that created these bombs. The scientists and military planners were in a race against time as they prepared for another strike. On August 9, 1945, a B-29 bomber named Bockscar took off from Tinian Island in the Pacific Ocean. The bomber was flown by Major Charles Sweeney. Its mission was to drop an atomic bomb on Kokura, a city in Japan. But when they got there, the city was covered in clouds, making it too risky to bomb. Running low on fuel, the crew turned toward their secondary target, Nagasaki. The bomb on Bockscar was called Fat Man. Unlike the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, Fat Man used a different design. It was a plutonium bomb, which means it worked a little differently. Inside, there was a core of plutonium surrounded by explosives. When the explosives went off, they squeezed the plutonium core until it exploded. It was a very complicated piece of technology at the time. At 11:02 in the morning, the bomb fell on Nagasaki. It exploded roughly 1,500 feet above the city. The blast was huge. Buildings were destroyed, fires started, and many people lost their lives. The power of Fat Man was enormous, and it left a huge mark on the city and its people. The mission to drop the bomb wasn't simple at all. The crew faced problems with fuel and weather. They had to make tough decisions in the air about what to do when the primary target was not visible. These challenges show how many things can go wrong and how many tough calls had to be made during this mission. As a result of the atomic bomb drop, many thousands of people died or were injured in Nagasaki. The devastation was massive. Just 6 days after this bombing, on August 15, 1945, Japan announced its surrender. This effectively ended World War II. The use of atomic bombs changed the course of history and forced people to think about the impact of nuclear weapons. Why does this matter to us today? Well, it showed the world how powerful nuclear weapons are, and it made everyone aware of what these weapons could do. Since then, countries have worked hard to prevent the use of nuclear weapons ever again. This moment in history is an essential lesson about the consequences of war and the need for peace. Remembering what happened at Nagasaki helps us understand the importance of making sure that such a tragedy is never repeated. In the summer of 1945, the world was deep into World War II. The United States and its allies, including the United Kingdom and the Soviet Union, were fighting to end the war in Europe. Still, in the Pacific, the fight against Japan continued. The United States wanted to bring the war to a quick end and avoid more American lives lost. President Harry Truman had a tough decision to make. Key people during this time included President Truman and General Leslie Groves. They were part of the Manhattan Project, which was a secret plan to build an atomic bomb, a powerful new weapon. Robert Oppenheimer, a brilliant scientist, was in charge of putting this bomb together. The idea was that if it could cause enough damage, Japan might surrender. On August 6, 1945, the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, a city in Japan. The bomb was carried by a plane named the Enola Gay. When it exploded, it released an enormous amount of energy, equal to about 15,000 tons of TNT. The blast flattened the city, causing immediate destruction. 3 days later, on August 9th, another bomb hit Nagasaki. The weapon used here was even more powerful, with a force of 21,000 tons of TNT. Together, these bombings led Japan to surrender on August 15th, ending World War II. The bombs worked by causing a chain reaction with tiny particles called atoms. When the bomb went off, these particles split apart, releasing a huge amount of energy in a small amount of time. The intense heat and blast wiped out everything nearby and started fires that spread quickly. For the people who lived through these events, life changed forever. Many lost family members, homes, and their health. A lot of survivors, called hibakusha in Japanese, had to deal with injuries from burns and radiation exposure, which could make people sick in ways that were not understood back then. As cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki struggled to provide basics like food and shelter. Hospitals were destroyed, so treating the wounded was nearly impossible. There were not enough doctors or medicine to help everyone who needed it. Survivors faced discrimination too. Some people were scared that the radiation sickness was contagious, even though it was not. Because of these bombings, people began to question the use of nuclear weapons. The destruction showed how dangerous and powerful these weapons could be, making it important for countries to think about how to avoid such a future. Today, nuclear weapons are a big part of global politics, with leaders worldwide trying to prevent them from being used again. Why does this matter today? We live in a world where nuclear weapons still exist, and understanding their history helps us learn how to avoid conflicts. By listening to the stories of the survivors, we honor their experiences and take lessons to build a safer, more peaceful future. Remembering Hiroshima and Nagasaki is not just about the past. It's also about making sure that such events do not happen again. Everyone should know what happened to ensure we make smart choices moving forward. In 1945, World War II was nearing its end, but it wasn't over yet. The United States and its allies wanted to bring the fight to a close. Japan, one of the main Axis powers, refused to surrender. This stalled any peaceful conclusion to the war. President Harry Truman, leading the United States, faced a tough decision. He wanted a quick end to the war to save lives. Meanwhile, scientists had been working on a powerful new weapon called the atomic bomb. This bomb used nuclear reactions to release massive amounts of energy. Scientists said it could change warfare forever. Key people here included J. Robert Oppenheimer, the scientist leading the team that built the first atomic bomb. There was also General Douglas MacArthur, a military leader who played a big role in the Pacific theater of the war. They all hoped that using the new bomb would force Japan to surrender without a land invasion, which would likely result in many more casualties on both sides. On August 6, 1945, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. 3 days later, on August 9th, a second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. These events shocked the world. How did an atomic bomb work? Imagine splitting an atom, the smallest unit of matter. This process creates a huge explosion of energy. It was this power that the United States unleashed, symbolized by the massive mushroom clouds that rose over the cities. For people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the impacts were immediate and devastating. Buildings were flattened, fires raged, and thousands of people lost their lives within moments. Many survivors faced radiation sickness, a new and terrifying threat. People around the world started to realize that this kind of destruction changed the stakes of war forever. The challenges didn't stop there. Other countries had to decide how to react. The Soviet Union, led by Joseph Stalin, quickly accelerated its own nuclear weapons program. The international community faced tough choices about how to manage this new nuclear landscape. Japan announced its surrender on August 15, 1945. This marked the end of World War II. Having been heavily impacted, they had little choice but to comply with the demands following such devastation. In the rest of the world, reactions were mixed. Some people were relieved, happy that a land invasion wasn't necessary. Others were horrified by the massive loss of civilian lives. Countries began to debate the ethics of nuclear weapons. The United Nations was formed that October, with hopes to maintain peace and prevent future wars. So, why does this matter today? The use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki was a turning point. It kick-started a nuclear arms race that shaped international relations for the rest of the century. Today, it keeps influencing discussions about warfare, peace, and the power of technology. Understanding how these events unfolded helps us grasp the kind of world we live in now, one where the lessons from the past can still guide the decisions of the future. We still grapple with nuclear weapons in our world, and their impact continues to be felt globally whenever tensions rise. Understanding what happened over 70 years ago can help us make better choices moving forward. Let's rewind to World War II. It's 1945, and the world is still in chaos. This war had been going on for 6 years, and everyone wanted it to end. But there was a big question: how? The United States was fighting against Japan in the Pacific, and it was tough. Japanese soldiers were known for fighting to the last man, and an invasion of Japan could mean huge losses for both sides. Enter some key players. President Harry S. Truman of the United States had a critical decision to make. His military advisors told him about a new kind of bomb called the atomic bomb. Scientists, including big names like J. Robert Oppenheimer, had been working on this secret project, codenamed the Manhattan Project. They thought this bomb might finally end the war. So, what exactly happened? On August 6, 1945, a plane named Enola Gay dropped the first atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima in Japan. The bomb was nicknamed Little Boy, but its effects were anything but little. 3 days later, a second bomb, Fat Man, was dropped on Nagasaki. The devastation was massive, with tens of thousands of people killed instantly and many more suffering later on. Let's break down the technical stuff. These bombs were different from normal bombs because they used atoms. In simple terms, when the bomb exploded, it released an enormous amount of energy by splitting atoms apart. This created a huge blast, intense heat, and strong radiation. The explosion was so powerful that it flattened buildings and caused fires. What about the problems? People faced challenges we can hardly imagine. First, the immediate destruction was immense and shocking. Survivors, known as hibakusha, dealt with injuries, radiation sickness, and loss of family and homes. For the people of Japan, it was a time of great suffering and rebuilding. The results of the bombings were complicated. On one hand, Japan surrendered shortly after, on August 15, 1945, which officially brought an end to World War II. The United States and its allies were relieved that no more lives would be lost in battle. On the other hand, the world had entered a new era. The power of nuclear weapons was now known, and it changed global politics and warfare forever. So, why does this matter today? Well, for one thing, the events at Hiroshima and Nagasaki have taught us the importance of peace and diplomacy. The bombs showed how destructive nuclear weapons are. They are a powerful reminder of what can happen when technology is used for war. The legacy of Hiroshima and Nagasaki also reminds us to think about the moral choices leaders make in times of conflict. It's important to learn from the past to make better decisions in the future. These events continue to inspire discussions about disarmament and the peaceful use of technology. In the end, understanding what happened helps us see why we should care about making a better, safer world for everyone. It's not just about the past, but about how we make choices today that shape tomorrow.